Shawn Brown. I've known Shawn for a long time. He is a managed service provider, an MSP in the Atlanta area. Where he's from will be evident once you hear from him. Great guy. Like I said, known him for a long time, has great advice on small business owners, on managed service providers, on what to look for when growing your MSP, what when you want to acquire, when you want to merge. He's done all of it. He started his business right in 2007, where the big crash was, and how he was able to capitalize on that. Uh, Always enjoy talking to Shawn. Also, tips on vendors, how to look for partners. His view on discipline is very unique as well. I really enjoyed listening to that. But a great conversation with Shawn Brown out of Atlanta, Georgia. I know you're going to like it. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. The next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Shawn Brown, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Known you for a long time. Is it a great time to be an MSP right now?
I think it's a great time to be in business in general, much less an MSP. I think it's an awesome time, just like it was, whatever, 10, 12 years ago when I first met you. I think it
Yes.
was an awesome time back then, too. We definitely have got a lot more challenges these days. And, our model and our business is definitely a target from cyber criminals these days as well. So while it's a good time, it's also a scary time, based on what's going on out there these days. So
Yeah, and it's interesting. Not only are our clients targets, but like you said, the MSP themselves are, because of the tentacles they have with all their clients. They're all touching them all the time.
that's right. That's right. So we have to do everything like we have to do everything in our power to protect ourselves. I always tell our team that we're our number one client, and we have to treat ourselves more securely than anybody, because if they get into our systems and into us, then it's going to be a very bad day. So
Absolutely. So,
but we do all kinds of things to help prevent that too, so
yes.
which is what you have to these days.
Yeah, the tools have become a lot more sophisticated because they need to be.
you know the tools, yes, but I'm also just a fan of just good IT management. And a lot of the things that we see from attacks that we've helped with, from stories, that we've heard from industry veterans and just people in our industry, a lot of the times it's not this hugely sophisticated thing. Users are getting tricked by phishing emails, or like in the case of that Colonial Pipeline incident that happened
Right.
last year.
That's right.
That had a user account from an old employee that just never got disabled.
Wow.
So it's those good IT management practices that I think get overlooked a lot. Um, that people in our industry and quite frankly businesses in general, boy, they really got to pay attention to just some of the basics because in a lot of cases, I mean that's what's causing or that's the root of a lot of these attacks.
I didn't realize that. So the employee wasn't properly offboarded and their account was left open and hacked.
That's my understanding
Wow.
of from what I've read. Yeah, yeah.
Incredible. Incredible.
But I mean, we see that all the time. When we come in and do our kind of IT discovery and risk assessment with new customers, we find old employees and Office 365 licenses that are out there costing the company money that you know those people haven't been employed for months or years in some cases.
Wow. Wow.
So the tools are important, right? And so as the criminals get more sophisticated, our tool set, especially on the detection side, has definitely got to get more sophisticated. But
Mm.
man, it really just comes down to some good basic IT management principles that I think have gotten kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, even talk about password management. You add, sophisticated passwords and multi-factor authentication, and that was going to remove 95% of the attacks. Something like
Yep.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure the exact number and the exact stats,
Yeah, I
but
guessed.
man, if you can put MFA on everything you possibly can, you'll be better than a majority of the companies out there that don't. In fact,
Yeah.
I think the that Colonial one they got in through a VPN that didn't have 2FA on it.
Wow. So
Yep.
whoever's listening, multi-factor authentication is when you put in your password and then you're asked to authenticate in a different factor. Some people have it on their phones. Maybe you notice when you go to the gas station, you put your credit card in and it asks for your zip code. It's multi-factoring authenticating. 2FA would be two-factor authentication. And of course, Shawn mentioned VPN, which is a virtual private network.
Right. I forget that we sometimes are talking a lot of industry tech nerd
Yes.
acronyms. So yes, you're 100% right. Thanks
Yeah.
for helping me there.
You never know who's listening and you want to open it to everybody and especially small businesses. Just those simple putting multi-factor authentication, MFA on everything you do. If your current managed service provider isn't recommending it, make it happen. Just simple things like that can help
Yep.
significantly.
Yep, you're exactly right. Absolutely.
So when did you start SnapTech? Let's go through your origin, please, Shawn. Shawn Brown.
Oh, man. Um, so I got to make sure I get my dates right here because I think it was in kind of the fall time frame of 2007. I was
Ooh.
sitting around having a beer with an old fraternity brother of mine, and he had already kind of started Snap Technology, him and his wife, and it was just the two of them, and they were, doing really well. And he was looking for a change. I was kind of running an IT department for an organization, and I was looking for a change and ready to do something different. And I always, had this kind of entrepreneurial bug in me ever since I was, I don't know, little. Um, so we decided that, hey, I'm going to go in and quit my job and,
Wow.
a, a wife at home that didn't work with I believe, a 3-year old and a 1-year old. The
Whoa.
last thing in the world that you want to tell her is, "Hey, I'm going to go quit this great job I have and start a business with an old fraternity brother. But don't worry about it. We've solved all of our problems over a couple of beers, and we're going to be good."
Is that really how it went down, Shawn?
That is exactly how it went down. And God bless my wife. She looked at me and said, "You know what? I believe in you. Go make it happen."
Wow.
So I like to time the market, Joe.
I
And
was going to say
so,
2007
starting
was
it in
horrible.
2007
Yes.
and then, rolling right into 2008 and nine, I mean, the timing couldn't have been better.
No, it was the worst time possible.
Well,
Yes.
do you know what's funny about that, though? Actually, it was a great time for, I think, MSPs, or back then, we didn't even know it was called an MSP,
Right.
because our messaging back then was actually really good because a lot of people had internal IT staff
Mm.
and they were looking to cut cost. And so at the time, it was a great time to get into this
Ah.
business because we were able to kind of come in and and bring a team into an environment, not just a single IT kind of person, if that was the case,
Mm.
do it cheaper than a full time employee. So they were able to cut cost and, quite frankly, get a better experience because there was a team behind it. And we brought in, all
Hmm.
these cool tools, some of, like, what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, when we first kind of, had this concept and idea of kind of a managed service provider. I came to my old partner and said, "Hey, I've got this great idea. We're going to spend about $50,000 on this software, and we're going to change our business model." He was like, "Oh, no, we're not." And then I was like, "Oh, yes, we are." And so, one thing leads to another. You educate yourself and, um, run across great guys like yourself that were
Yeah.
doing it. We're all kind of learning and growing together, and,
That's right.
you know, built this great community. And, one thing led to another. And over time, not only did we, I think, you know, grow and learn from a technology and a business model standpoint, but we also kind of grew and learned and, made a lot of mistakes along the way on how to just run a business in general.
Mm.
Because a lot of people in our industry are just, converted tech nerds
Absolutely.
that, you know, decided to go out and start a business. And, um, it's challenging. It's hard to start and run your own business like that. So
Absolutely.
I think
Especially,
we did a lot of good things, but we made
yeah,
a lot
a
of
lot of
mistakes along the
mistakes.
way too.
Yeah, especially like you said, I started, I'm a technologist, and most of the managed service providers, the MSPs, are technology led. We all were in the trenches doing
Hmm.
it, and then we got kind of moved up. And uh, so, if everybody's listening and watching, you may think Sean's from New Jersey. He's not. He's from the greater Georgia area, where do you think the market played a little bit? I mean, we got hit hard in the Northeast from the crash in 2007 because a lot was finance based. And as the banks collapsed
Hmm.
and we lost good two-thirds of our client, it was devastating. But there was a bit different. They didn't shut down, they just looked at downsize, and that's how you were able to capitalize.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Back then, we're really big in financial and compliance driven
Mm,
organizations now. Back then, we were not.
right.
We had a big vertical in education, um,
That's right.
and then just other just kind of small businesses along the way, right? Um, so I don't think we got kind of hit as hard in
Mm,
Atlanta as maybe you kind of did up in Connecticut.
yeah.
Um, just the luck of the draw, or just sometimes you get lucky, I guess.
Whatever it means.
What
Yeah.
what what what's the saying? The harder I work, the luckier I
Right,
get.
that's right. Yeah, luck favors the prepared. Yeah. And then
That's right.
one thing about our industry that I don't see, especially with the vendors, by the way, I deal a lot with the vendors, distribution,
Hmm.
is that our sense of community. We met at a peer group. We've also met at Chart Tech Academy there in Bakersfield, California, and we all had a bit of a brotherhood. We all shared with each other. We all believed in,
Hmm.
helping each other. Very, very seldom. Almost, I can't even think of an example where you met somebody who didn't want to share anything. Only if our vendors and some of our distribution would would do the same thing. A lot of them don't like each other at
Yeah.
all. But let's talk about the power of the peers and how it helped your business, the peer groups.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this or not. Maybe I've told you before. I can't remember. But we actually started um, on a different kind of ticketing system for our non-industry people. We call that a PSA, or professional automation software. Um, we started on a different platform originally.
I think I remember that.
Today we use, ConnectWise, which is a major player in our industry and a major software that a lot of us use. But the reason why I made the switch from what we were using to ConnectWise was the community.
Right.
I saw a bigger community and more help coming out of that software and that community than what we were originally on.
Hmm.
And so we went through the painstaking process of switching out a major line of business application that we were using specifically for the community.
Yeah, we did
It
that.
wasn't the it wasn't the bells and whistles and
Right.
features.
Features. Yeah.
They were all pretty similar. But it was the IT nation, it was the community groups, it was a lot of the things that they were doing um, to help drive and educate and get us to collaborate and to learn from each other. That was the value that I saw, and the reason why we made the switch in vendors.
Yeah, and then once you're all have your similar, especially the PSA, the professional service application, like you said, that's really primary, right? If it's not in ConnectWise, it didn't happen, right? So it was
Right.
everybody used it. The other tools, the kind of people kind of varied, but we certainly all use that. And then we were able to share on how to do tickets and how to close them and all those kinds
Mm-hmm.
of standard operating procedures, SOPs came from that. And it's much simpler when you all have the same kind of foundation like that.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we learned all kinds of tips and tricks and workflows and
Mm,
automation things that we could do inside the software. And then we all kind of learned and shared. And
that's right.
you I can't speak highly enough of the time that we had in HTG, and now it's called Evolve. But here recently, over the last, I guess, 3 years, I've also joined another peer group called Entrepreneur Organization,
Yeah.
or
EO.
EO.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been fantastic too. That's from a different aspect, right? Because EO is made up of just all kinds of different businesses, not just kind of technology service providers. Um, but it's a whole nother group of people that are willing to share and learn and to grow with each other. So I, I'm a huge fan of peer groups, if you can't tell.
Yeah.
Regardless of your business and industry, um, it's great. Um, just having someone to bounce ideas off of, or to talk with, and to kind of do life with, if you will.
Makes all the difference. Yeah. Jameson West, a good
Mhm.
friend, of course, has been with
Sure.
EO many years. I think he's president now of Las Vegas chapter, and he speaks highly of his as well. So it's 2007. You quit your job, wife and two kids, Shawn,
Yeah.
and economy tanks, but you actually do well in it. Walk me through the next phases.
Sure. Well, it was interesting. The meeting that I had with the company I was working with, where I went in and resigned, I in the same meeting picked them up as a client.
Ah,
So that kind of helped, right? So we,
you had inside hand. Yeah, that's nice.
yeah. So hey, I'm leaving, but I can still help, and here's how we can help, kind of deal.
Wow.
So we went from there and slowly started growing. Back then we had a model where um, it was still kind of contracted. This was back in 2007, 2008. So we were still doing some contracted stuff, but it was more, we were on site at this client on this day, and this client on that day, and this client on that day. Because
Mm,
back then we didn't really have all these, remote software technology that really worked very well. But that was our original kind of agreement clients, if you
mm.
will, were just kind of blocks per day. I quickly realized, though, that can't scale the way I wanted it to scale. And so we started looking. That's when I really started looking for, PSA software and this kind of remote monitoring and management software. That's when I came and said, "Hey, we're going to go spend a bunch of money and change our business model."
Yeah.
Um, which, hey, knock on wood, it's kind of worked out. Um,
Yes.
but we kind of transitioned from that over to this kind of more remote managed service model, and slowly just started growing the organization. I think um, we had a good core group of team members that was working with us, which was hugely important. But honestly, back then, even though I had a business degree, I really knew nothing about
Mm.
managing people and running an organization. There wasn't a whole lot of, we were good at the technology stuff. We were really bad, I think, at some of the business maturity things.
Mm.
And that stuff, kind of came over time as you started growing and, what we call delegating and elevating. I slowly was able to spend more and more time. Our HTG groups definitely helped out with that as well. So you started getting into some of the finances and learning about, what these numbers are and what they really meant. And then just having more and more time to focus on the fundamentals of the business and not actually having to, turn the wrenches or hit the keyboard as much anymore.
Hmm.
So we slowly grew it that way, over time. And I think about 2000, it was 2013 or 2014. We ended up landing and working with a a very large kind of publicly traded multi-billion-dollar global company,
Mm.
which quite frankly, I was shocked that a company like that would engage with a small MSP like us. That really escalated our growth and also matured us a lot. You we talk now about how we're into security and compliance, but we've been in security and compliance since like 2014.
Wow.
2014 was the first year we went through what's called a SOC 2 Type 2 audit. And so I think our industry is just now kind of catching up to some of these auditing and compliance things. Well, we got kind of forced into it back in 2014 because this company came to me and said, "Hey, whenever you get a minute, just send over your latest SOC 2 report." I'm like, "SOC 2 what?"
Hmm.
I had no idea, right? So we educated and quickly learned, what a third party audit and a SOC 2 report really meant,
Hmm.
and really started diving deep into security and compliance and process and, you know, policy documents. And then you have your evidence to back up to your policy documents. And so we started diving heavily into that. And in fact, I just now got my latest report from our latest SOC 2 report came in this week for 2021. So
Wow.
we just finished our audit this past year, and so but we've been doing it for a long time now, which I think has really helped us as an organization from a security and compliance and just from a maturity standpoint.
So you do internal audits internally for better kind of each better certification with your clients.
Yeah, so we have a third party auditor that reviews everything.
Wow.
I mean, they're into our systems, they're reviewing all of our policy documents, they're matching up our policy documents to what's configured in our system. Just to give an example of that, so we might have a password policy document that says our passwords have to have this complexity, they've got to be this length, they've got to be, XYZ, rotated every 90 days, or whatever our policy document says, that's our law, right? That's our internal law. And then our auditor will go open up, Active Directory and go look where that is configured in our system and say, okay, do the two things match?
Right.
And if they don't, then that's an exception. So we've got a policy document that doesn't match how we're configured. So those are the things that they dive in and take a look at: our policies, our procedures, um, and they review it all.
Hmm.
Which I want them to go through our systems with a fine tooth comb, just because of what we talked about earlier. We're a target, and so we have to do everything we can to protect us internally. Because if someone were to compromise our systems, there's a chance they might be able to get into some of our client systems as well. So, so we started all that back in 2014, um, to kind of continue our MSP story, I guess. In 2015, we started a conversation of merging our organization with another group out of that we met in HTG, or back in those peer groups. And we kind of finalized that in 2016. And that's where we picked up offices in Phoenix and San Francisco, and where I have, Carl Bickmore and Randy Crockett as partners that were part of that kind of merger that we did back then. We kept moving along in our HTG group. We're all kind of working on the same thing, and we felt, hey man, we could build this faster and better together than we can apart. And so we kind of combined the organizations in 2016, and have continued to grow it. Now I think we've got somewhere in between 35 and 40 employees now. So that's if you go back to 2007, when there were two of us.
Right.
That's it's not the fastest growth, but that's also you know we've we've had a good time. Like I said, we've done a lot of things right. We did a lot of things wrong too.
Absolutely. Let's talk about first the transition from kind of the time you talked about block hours, the time and material. That's still
Mhm.
a lot of companies, small businesses work with. They charge for their time hourly, they charge for the materials they use, and then that transition to managed services where it's fixed, where it's a fixed amount that the client pays for every month, regardless on how many hours you work. That's kind of the genesis, I would think, of managed service provider. That's how we manage
Yeah,
the time. But the tools were needed there. And how did that process go? Was that a smooth process for you and your clients?
absolutely not.
Right. Very
But the
different.
messaging was, and I still use this messaging today. That business model, to me, that break fix model, um, is flawed if we're thinking about um, your IT provider being a partner and not just a
Right.
vendor. And the reason why I say that is, in that old model, if something breaks, you call me. If it takes me 3 hours to fix it, well, then that's good for me because I got to bill you for 3 hours. But that's bad for you because, one, you got to pay for 3 hours, and two, you may have 3 hours worth of downtime. If I flip the model and treat it more like a partnership, then I don't want you to be down for 3 hours. I don't want our team to be working on a ticket or an issue for 3 hours, because that's not good for either one of us,
Right.
right? And so we try to do everything we can from a proactive standpoint, or from a you know configuration, setting things up to have the least amount of problems. And that's where we really bring the value to an organization, especially if you're in security and compliance, or if your revenue is tied to your kind of employees or team. I mean, think about a 25-person law firm that's billing $400 or $500 an hour. That organization being down for 3 hours gets kind of expensive.
Hmm.
Or, I mean, I've seen recent cases where you've had a 25 or 50-person law firm that's been down for a week and a half because all of their systems got infected with ransomware. That's a whole lot more expensive than trying to just do things right, put the right protection in place. So the reason why I love this model is just for that same reason. If you're really looking for a partner, our goals are aligned. And in that old model, they really weren't.
Yeah, I've had many conversations with clients, and if stuff goes wrong, we benefit. And we don't want to be in the business of your stuff going wrong. So let's work together. We'll charge a fixed price. We'll do everything
Yep,
proactively. We'll make sure everything's updated so those things don't happen. And if they do happen, we will take care of it. But we're going to do everything and try everything to make sure it doesn't.
that's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah. And let's also talk about so you kind of merged with I know Carl very well. And did you do any acquisitions before that?
Yeah, they had done a couple of small acquisitions up in like the Sacramento area, and then probably the largest one we did was in San Francisco. We acquired a company that had been around for about 25 years in San Francisco, but was predominantly a phone system vendor.
Mm,
And so we view that as a complementary addition to our solution stack and access into that market with a
that's
lot of customers in that market that this company had been working with for 25 years putting in phone systems. So yeah, so those were some of the acquisitions that we had done. um, the market today is very it's different than it was a couple of years
yeah,
ago.
yeah,
Private equity firms
yes.
have discovered kind of this managed service business model and these the recurring revenue business model, and so it's definitely added a lot more buyers into the market than
Yeah.
what was there before. But it's still a big strategy of ours to continue to um, look for complementary businesses, look for companies that kind of match with kind of who we are, and you know, culture and core values are a huge portion of that and component of that. Regardless of whether you're a MSP business or any business, if you're looking to do any kind of M&A work, I think the company culture and core values and kind of what inherently makes the company them um, is incredibly important if you're talking about buying or merging with another organization.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned M&A, mergers and acquisitions. Looking at P&L, profit and loss, and merging them together is one thing. But then, how do you test, Sean, for culture? I had this discussion recently where, you bring a couple companies together and the culture just clashes. I mean, how can we could do accounting for finances, but how do you measure culture?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, right?
Yeah.
Some of the things that we've done in the past and some of the just conversations and things that we've done, um, I like to ask what their core values are.
Mm.
What's your criteria for hiring? What do you guys look for in your team? I mean, you can gain a lot by sitting down and having a conversation with someone too, and asking questions. Like for us, when we do interviews now for new team members for us internally, I mean, we've got a set of questions that we ask that are specifically kind of targeted about our core values and about whether or not they would be a good team player or
Hmm.
not.
Hmm.
So those same kinds of questions that we would ask during an interview. In fact, our first interview with any potential new team member for us has nothing to do with technology. We don't ask them a single technical question.
Wow.
It's all core value and team player match. In fact, the first person that does an interview, for us for a new team member is not technical at all,
Hmm.
but she understands our core value and this whole team, concept, and she's trying to help us judge whether or not they fit with us.
Hmm.
Because I can teach you the technology, I can teach you, but I can't teach you how, you know, to,
Accountability.
to yeah, I can't teach you how to be a good team player if you're not a good team player. If you're a jerk, you're not going to fit,
Hmm.
right? And so I think asking those kinds of questions and having a strategy and plan around, okay, I know if I can ask these questions, that'll help me understand whether or not they're a good team player, or they're going to do the right thing in a certain situation, or whether they're devoted to customer care. So those are a couple of our core values. Are they going to make it better? Do they have this just inherent nature in them that constantly wants to make things better?
Hmm.
Which that's an important core value of ours. Is we're not satisfied with status quo, and we're always looking to make constant continual improvements and to make it better.
Hmm. So would
So
an
those are
exit?
kinds of questions I would ask during
Yeah.
M&A to try to figure out whether or not they were a good cultural fit.
So are those like scenario based questions where, you're in a situation and it's, this happens and this happens and this happens, what would you do? That kind of thing?
Yeah, similar. Yeah, there's questions like that, but I'll also ask questions like, um, so we follow. There's a great book. I love plugging books. So Patrick Lencioni, one of my favorite authors, wrote a
Sure.
book, Ideal Team Player, and so in that he always talks about, are they humble, hungry, and smart?
Mm,
And humble
yeah.
meaning, if I ask you a question, Joe, tell me the last time that you just really screwed up.
Yeah.
If you can't tell me the last time you screwed up, because I promise you, I screw up all the time,
Mm,
right? But if you can't tell me the last time you screwed up, then maybe you're not quite as humble as I want you to be.
right.
Oh, I never make a mistake, right? Because in the heat of the moment, if that person were to come work for us and they actually made a mistake, would they ever admit it?
Own up.
Because I can solve it. I can get back and correct it if I know what happened. But if you never told me you made the mistake and never wanted to admit to it, then it's hard to go correct it. So those are some of the things that we kind of ask, to help us understand whether or not you're kind of humble, hungry, and smart. And then we've got
Mm.
other kind of scenario questions, or just questions in general, that we ask around just kind of core values.
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say last time I screwed up was on number 4. I don't know why I used a 7 iron, but but I did, and then I paid for it. And it brings another, like, you get to know somebody. You can really get to know somebody over 18 holes, by the way.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, you could really tell, when they screw up. Are they a club thrower? Are they, over a meal, over, something like that, when you kind of take them out of the element? Hard to do that with everybody, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a time and a place to, depending on the level of position that you're maybe
Mm.
hiring for, or if you're in a M&A deal, for example. I think there's appropriate level things. Do you take them to the golf course and watch them hit a Titleist into the woods and play a pinnacle out of the woods? And when you ask them about it, they're a magician.
You
Or
were
do they
playing the
have the
yellow
enough
ball?
integrity to go, you know what? I really lost that ball.
That's
I really took a drop. And um,
right. Yeah, very, very true. So, what advice do you have for? Uh, let's talk about MSPs in a couple of realms: to run their business, just to be in the business, and then those that are looking to acquire and to be acquired. Sean, what kind of advice do you have for them?
yeah, good questions. Um, so I was thinking about this. And so my answer is, coming from an MSP, but I feel like it applies to any business. So
Mm,
regardless of the business you're in, if you're listening to this, um, I think this applies to regardless of your business. I think some of this stuff applies. In fact, I did a I spoke down at IT Nation this past year in November, and I did something similar, but it was 10. I did 10 kind of best practices. And
ah,
so now
nice,
I'm going to pare this down,
good.
but I'm going to group some stuff together
Good,
um,
good, good.
and add in some bonus stuff for you. So
Fantastic.
I'm going to cheat a little bit on your question. All right. So the first thing that I kind of led with, and that I think that we really that I really screwed up in the very beginning as I was kind of building the business, and was something that I definitely learned, and it really didn't hit home for me until probably about 2015, was this what I call clear vision.
Hmm.
And so what I mean by clear vision is, you really, if you're leading a team, you really need to be able to paint the picture for that team about where you're going. We've heard this, you know, said in business books and conferences and everything, but that really started hitting home for me as our team started getting larger and we were in multiple cities, and we had to come up with or find a system that enabled us to really paint a great vision for where we were going. And so part of the way that we do that is we set what we call, like everything, we borrowed this from Jim Collins and his BHAG. So we create this kind of 10-year, kind of big, hairy, audacious goal, right? And that's the flagpole that you stick out about where we're going to try to, you know, where we're trying to drive the company or where the company is going. And my kind of advice there is, don't set it as kind of a revenue. We want to be $30 million. It's hard for the team to kind of visualize
Hmm.
a number that's just a revenue number. It has to be something more kind of tangible to them and important to them. So set that tenure, whatever that tenure is, wherever you want that organization to be in 10 years, set that clear vision of, or that BHAG of where you want to be. For us, then we kind of take that and then we back it down and say, okay, in the next 3 years, if we're going to hit that, what's the organization need to look like in 3 years to make sure we're on target to hit this 10 year?
Hmm.
And so we call that a 3 year picture. And so if this is sounding familiar, we follow this EOS traction kind of system. But you got to have this 3 year picture. And that's where you can start getting into some measurables, like this is our revenue target. This may be an EBITDA target. You need some measurable goals in there. Um, and then, you know, um, and then you need to have just some um, bullet points or description. We originally started with these kind of bullet point ideas because that was kind of the EOS kind of traction
EOS is
mentality of it.
Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS.
That's exactly right. And so their concept is, you have this kind of bulleted list that kind of paints the picture of what the organization looks like. How many employees do you have? What are some of the systems you have in place? What you're trying to do is help your team understand what the picture of the organization is going to look like in 3 years. Now, I'll drop another book for you. Um, Cameron Harold wrote a book called Vivid Vision. And so he describes in this book the similar concept of painting this kind of 3 year or 5 year kind of picture, but he describes it as wanting to write out, a 3 to 5 page document that really paints a clear picture of what the organization looks like in that 3 to 5 year time frame, which I think is a great idea and concept. Something that we may introduce into our organization, just to kind of paint a better, the clearer I can make that picture, the more I think you can get a
That's
team
right.
to drive to it and buy into it, because they know exactly where you're headed and what you want to do. So from that 3 year, we create a 1 year plan. So that 1 year plan is a third of the way to our 3 year picture. So, what are our goals and what do we need to
Hmm.
accomplish this coming up year in order to get us a third of the way to that 3 year picture, which gets us a third of the way to that 10 year? And then we have, kind of
Hmm.
quarterly meetings and things around setting quarterly goals. And those quarterly goals help drive you to the 1 year, that drives you to the 3 year, that drives you to. Um, but I think having that kind of clear vision
Hmm.
really helps the organization understand where you're going. It provides a system and a process that helps you kind of bite it off into small chunks and continue to work towards that. So that was number one. I kind of, like I said, I added some bonus stuff in there for you. Um,
Hmm.
the second thing that I think, man, I really screwed up on this, big time, back in the day. I never really saw the purpose or the value in it, like I think, um, you know, probably a lot of businesses do, um, is just core values and purpose. Um, back in the day, we all would kind of sit down and say, yeah, integrity sounds like a really good core value. That's one of our core values. And then, you create all these kind of what I'll call, they're either aspirational core values, meaning they're core values that you're really aspiring to be, but they're
Hmm.
really not you.
Right.
Or you're creating like integrity or the core values that I call like permission to play core values. Like
Hmm.
if you don't have integrity and you're not honest, then that should just be a given, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so those are what I call kind of, just permission to play core values.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so we went through that exercise in 2015, 2016 about really defining kind of our core values and our purpose. Um,
And when you said we,
about
just
who,
leadership or the employees? Who we?
yeah, so it was our leadership team that got together. And so I'll tell you the exercise we used to do it. Um, so we had our leadership team together. At that point, there were 6 or 7 people on the leadership team. And the exercise was okay, everybody take a couple of minutes and write down a person that currently works for the organization that you think just exemplifies who SnapTech IT is as an organization. So you write down that person's name, or you write down 2 or 3 people's names, and then you say, okay, well, describe to me what are some of the characteristics that make that person just a perfect match for SnapTech? What are the things that make that
Hmm.
person the perfect team member, that make that person the perfect, employee for the organization? And you start writing down just things that inherently make them who they are, right? Um,
Hmm.
take that, put it all up on a board, and you scratch out all of the permission to play and the aspirational ones, and you slowly kind of whittle it down to the 3 to 5 kind of core values that make you who you are as an organization.
Very nice.
And then, sometimes you have to wordsmith them a little bit and combine a couple of them. But the real key to that is understanding who you are as the organization. And then you have to hire, fire, and recognize based on those core values,
Yeah.
right? And so if a person in the organization doesn't adhere to the core values that you've come up with, it's not their fault if they're already a team member. You may have team members on your team that you've created this new list of core values. It's not their fault that they got hired. You just moved the goalpost on them and said,
That's
hey,
true.
this is who we are now. And so you may lose some people, but the people you lose maybe should have been gone anyway,
Hmm.
right? And so it
Hmm.
won't. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? But then everything you do surrounds those core values. It's how you hire. It's how you fire. It's how you evaluate your team members. It's all based on core values now. All right, so that's number. I think that was number two, and then
Yes.
number three, just financial management. Man, you just got to know your numbers.
Mm.
Um, you wouldn't fly an airplane and not understand what your altitude is. Just like you shouldn't run a business and not understand what your P&L means and what your EBITDA number is. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So, but you wouldn't run a business, and I think that was part of the problem, that we had in the beginning too. Is we were doing good and we were making money, and generating a profit. But in the beginning, I wasn't really sure where we were making money and how we were generating a profit. I just knew
Mm.
we had cash in the bank. Um, we've definitely become, a lot more sophisticated now, and as the organization grows and matures, I think that's just kind of part of it. But I mean, I still talk to people all the time that don't understand their numbers, that
Mm.
don't have the right kind of revenue buckets, the right cost of goods buckets, and understand what kind of line of businesses or what areas of the business they're generating the most profit from.
Seems
So
so simple. Yeah, but it's important.
simple, not easy.
Simple, not easy. Yeah, you mentioned that. That's very good. Yeah, so many of the technology led firms just don't understand basic P&L profit and loss management. I
You know,
didn't when before I joined the peer groups. I did not, and then I quickly learned. Yeah,
yeah, we had that advantage of being in that peer group where every quarter we had to enter in our financial
that's right.
numbers into a normalized chart of accounts, and boy, you got exposed quickly
Very
if
quickly.
if you didn't know what was going on.
Yeah,
But the companies that didn't benefit from that, or that are just starting out, or have been in it for a couple of years, that haven't had that level of kind of peer group association, they may not have that level of
absolutely.
accountability. So financial management, huge.
So let's talk about vendors. What can you've been in business a long time. You've had many vendors. You've
Hmm.
switched vendors, the PSA. So
Yep.
what should vendors know? What should they do better when working with MSPs?
Yeah. So I heard this, years and years and years ago, that the most successful companies get really tight with their vendors. And so
Hmm.
we kind of took that to heart. And the ones that are truly strategic with us, I don't really call them vendors. I call them they're my partners.
Mm.
And so, some of the advice that I would give that I've kind of, learned over the years, um, from a vendor standpoint, and a lot of them do a really good job of this now. In the beginning, not so much, but, focus on that kind of long-term relationship with us. Um, you know, Sometimes I might need to ask you for a favor
Hmm.
or some situation like, can I call out any vendors that did good? Well,
Absolutely.
okay. So I'll tell you, we had, Datto is a great partner of ours, and we've used their products for a very long time. We had a situation where, a client had a 3-year agreement on one of their large backup units, um, and the client went bankrupt. We technically owned that
Mm.
relationship and that, agreement with Datto. And I came to him and said, "Look, tough situation. You know, this has happened. I need your help on this one. Um, let's work together and find a good solution that is good for you guys and good for us." Because ultimately, we had a unit that was larger than ones that we would typically do because this was a pretty large client.
Hmm.
Um, and they were awesome and worked
Wow.
with us on it. That was probably outside of their rules and their policies, but they understand that we were not just a customer, that we were a partner, um, and they were a partner of ours and not just a vendor.
It's awesome.
So sometimes, you know you got to kind of break your policy and break your rules and maybe look at the bigger picture and what would a partner do versus what would a vendor do. I'd
Very
say
good.
that's probably the first one. Um, the next one, make sure that your services kind of align with how we sell. And I think a
Mm,
majority of them, except for whatever Microsoft is doing these days with whatever it is they're
that's
doing.
right. The new licensing program. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Try to get your programs to align with how we do business. If you want us to be a partner with you, um, make that billing integration, do things and integrate with systems that we use. Um, Especially if you are working with an MSP that's got any kind of scale to them, doing any kind of like manual, auditing or manual billing is really a no go.
Mm,
We can't do that at scale. Um, so make your partner programs, kind of align with us. Make them simple to understand. Um, then maybe the last is just plug in with our community.
mm.
Right? There's a number of vendors now. Um, just off the top of my head, ConnectWise, Huntress, Dado. There are several that really have just kind of plugged into our community. Um, and really, it's kind of outside of what they do, but they're doing a great job of helping protect us. Like, I remember a story from last year where I don't remember if it was Dado or Huntress or somebody had picked up a on the dark web that an MSP's credentials were being sold.
Wow.
They were then able to kind of through some back channels um, get in touch with ConnectWise, work with ConnectWise to understand who the partner was. And ConnectWise called the partner and said, "Hey, just so you know, your credentials are currently being marketed and sold on the dark web right now."
Wow.
So that's a great example of a vendor in our community that is diving into our space and maybe doing something that's kind of outside of what they normally do, but adding great value. Um, I guess on top of that
Mm,
too is just understanding and kind of getting in and doing sponsorships and getting involved with our community, providing good educational content that's not just a promo for your product and service, but a deeper understanding of why someone might need that product or service or what problems it's really solving, not just a demo. Um,
outstanding.
so those are a couple of things that I could think of, from a vendor slash partner perspective. Um, that, like I said, I think some people are doing a really good job of it. Others, there's so many out there now
Mm,
too. Especially when we talk about these new like security tools. There's so many of them. Um, but maybe diving in and saying, hey, this is specifically what we do. And this is the value we bring. Um, you know, Here are some of who our competitors are, and here's where we're a little different.
mm.
Because we're going to go do the research anyway. You might as well just come out and tell me.
That's right. Yeah, save me that time. Yeah. And it's really important because the MSP cannot thrive and cannot support their clients without great vendor partners.
100% agree.
They need
Yep.
each other. Everybody wins. The vendor wins, the MSP wins, and most importantly, the MSP's clients win.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if we got time for one more story, I'll tell you
Okay,
what
please.
not to do.
Good.
Don't do this to your, you know, MSP partners. Don't say that you've got a partner program, require them to register deals. And the moment you register the deal, you go behind them and sell it to the customer direct cheaper than what you quoted to the MSP. Don't do that. I had that happen to me years ago too. And I won't name that vendor.
Sean, it happened to me too, and I know. I bet you it's the same vendor. I bet you it's the same vendor, and it's got 4 letters, and yeah,
It
and
does.
and they're out of Texas, and y-
Well, mine was $300,000 deal. So mine
mine
was
was about that as well.
now that was painful.
Yeah, mine was about that as well. It was a school system in the Northeast. Yeah, it was.
Oh, it's so funny. Mine was a school system too.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, rhymes with smell. I mean, I've said this story before, and and I bring it to their attention, and they laugh about it, and they say it won't happen again, and who knows? I don't see them at shows. I don't see them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. $190 billion market MSPs. And uh, let's see what happens. Hopefully, they can learn and they don't do it again. But those stories get around quick to us MSPs.
Oh yeah.
Very
Well,
quick.
it was the last deal I ever registered with them,
Yes, that's right.
and
Yes.
it was the last time I ever tried to buy anything from them.
Me too. Me too. I don't even do anything personal with them. Absolutely not. Yeah, yeah, absolutely not. Yeah. And it's interesting. Back in the 90s, everybody was building white boxes, and that company changed the whole industry, right? They had the
Yeah.
website, you could order whatever you want. They just pretty much put all those white box companies out of business. That was
Yeah.
single-handedly. Michael Dell did that. And then you had competing departments with each other. And this is what happens.
Well,
Terrible.
think about it like this: how much money have they lost on me
That's right.
over the last
That's right.
whatever 8 to 10 years
Yeah.
over one deal?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So pretty short
Short-sighted.
sighted.
Yeah, very
Hmm.
short-sighted. Yeah. On the podcast, we always talk about discipline, Sean. Everybody asks me how I lost all the weight. I always say discipline. Do you consider yourself a disciplined person?
I think if you're successful in life, you have to have some level of discipline.
Hmm.
You regardless of whether you're losing weight or you're working on a golf handicap or
Hmm.
working on a golf game or just everything in life. Discipline is about for me, it's about doing the things that you need to do when sometimes you don't want to do them.
Hmm.
You know, um, but I don't know any truly successful people that don't have this just inherent drive and discipline inside them. Um, I think it's a hugely important trait that people need to have. Can we all be better at it? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Can, do I get up and hit the Peloton like I should every day? Unfortunately, I have to say no,
Yeah.
but you know, um, I do it more than I used to, and so there is that. I'm trying to get better.
Yeah.
Um,
We all are. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's an important part to everybody, and just you know, um, recognizing and understanding when you're making those decisions and why you're making those decisions. We could talk ourselves into anything,
Mm.
but why? Why are you doing it? You know?
Yeah. Very well said, Sean. I get a decent amount of pushback. Like even some of the things we talked about today, like got to have better P&L management, got to have better, focus, got to have your core values. I would argue that all those involve a level of discipline to achieve. And some say you don't need discipline, you need more love and compassion and direction. And I love the conversation, by the way, because I still think there's some discipline involved there.
Of course. Um, yeah, yeah, you need love and compassion. We all,
Yes,
of course, but they're not mutually exclusive.
that's right.
You
Yeah.
know, I feel like I'm showing love and compassion sometimes when I'm having to do discipline.
That's right. Yeah, good point. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I would be doing a disservice, I think, to myself and our team sometimes um, if we didn't.
Hmm. Absolutely. Sean, what
You know,
motivates you?
you know, um, I have this just burning desire to win,
Huh. I've seen it
and
a little bit. Yeah.
and whether that's winning at golf, or that's beating my kids at Monopoly, or that's just I think it's just part of me.
Hmm.
I'm a big sports fan.
Yeah.
And
Congratulations, by the way.
yeah, we're recording this the week that my beloved Georgia Bulldogs just won.
Can't believe you haven't mentioned it yet, but yeah, yeah, they
You
won the
know,
national
hey, I was
championship. Yeah,
won the national championship, and
for
so
Alabama.
go
Yeah,
Dogs.
yeah.
Um, but I think that's part of it. I just have this inherent nature to win, um, and it's not it's let me see how do I explain it. It's not I have to someone has to lose in order for me to win.
Mm,
Um, I'm specifically talking about like business, right?
mm,
And so I don't feel like someone has to lose in order for me to win. Part of what I think drives me there is I've got this 10-year BHAG, I've got this 3-year picture, I've got this 1-year kind of plan that we've laid out, and I want to win to achieve those things, because I know if I can achieve those things, I can help the other people on my team achieve what they want to achieve. Like we've laid out, career plans and goals,
mm.
and one of the things that we did when we laid out that 3-year picture is I built an organizational chart, or what we call an accountability chart, that was the company 3 years from now, with all these different roles that we envision in the organization. And I ask people, look at where you are now, look at where this organization is going. Tell me where in this org chart or this accountability chart you see yourself, and let's put the plan together to help you get there. And so part of that winning to me is enabling them to get where they want to be and helping them win,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, all floating. I'm sorry, rising tides. What is it?
Yeah. Rising tides lifts all boats, or
Boats.
something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah. I messed that up royally, but yeah, I think yeah, winning doesn't necessarily mean stepping on somebody's throat, right? We can all win.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. It's you know me helping drive the organization also helps prove it to myself that I could do it.
Sure. But in the
You know,
case of the national championships, the Bulldogs did step on the Alabama's throat. But
yeah,
that's
yeah, we won't go there,
I won't go there.
or we
Absolutely.
could. I'd be totally fine if we did, because they
It's
beat us like 7 times in a
they
row.
did, they did, yeah, took them right out. Shawn Brown, and how do you measure success?
Man, that's a really good question. Um, I, in a couple of ways, right? Um, those quarterly goals that we set, are we hitting those? Are we hitting the weekly kind of task and objectives that I set for myself? If I'm hitting those, I'm feeling successful. If I'm enabling my team to grow and get what they want, I view that as a success. Um, in life, I measure success by the happiness in my marriage, the success that I see my kids having, the the young adults that I watch my kids grow into.
Mm,
Um, there is, to me, no greater compliment than when some of my golf buddies, after we played golf with my son, and he usually beats us all,
mm,
goes, "Man, not only is he a great golfer, but man, he is a great young man."
yeah,
Um,
that's
that's
good.
success.
Yeah.
You know, looking at, my daughter is big into art and is in college now doing graphic design stuff, and seeing some of the artwork and some of the creativity that she has, and people going, "Wow, that's amazing! I can't believe she did that." Man, that's success.
Mm,
Um,
Very
I don't know.
rewarding. Yeah, well said. Shawn Brown, absolute pleasure. I hope our audience can get a bit of the appreciation that I have for you. I mean, you're always positive. You always make me smile. I always love being around you. And I credit you, by the way, for introducing me to the biscuit and chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. I never had one before. And we were in California, and you said, Joe, you've never had one. I said, no, we don't have Chick-fil-A in the Northeast at the time. And you brought some in, and I couldn't believe what I've been missing. And I always credit you for that. Thank you very much. And let's get on the course. I can't wait to see you again next time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was a ton of fun. We'll do it again soon, and we'll absolutely be playing golf soon.
Absolutely. Shawn, thank you so much. Be well. Thank you for your time.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.